Hi, I'm going to try a beef jerky experiment today with my dehydrator, and I'm going to make it two ways. First with ground meat and also with solid meat cut into strips. And for the ground meat I've got a 4% lean, 96% lean, 4% fat, and the solid meat I'm going to be using is a beef top round steak. And they're both about a pound, maybe a little over. This is 1.05 pounds and this is 1.3 pounds. Some of this will be probably trimmed away when I get the fat and stuff off it. So they'll both be roughly about a pound. And I'm going to be marinating them in exactly the same marinade. It's just a very basic teriyaki flavored marinade. I got the recipe from this book by Mary Bell, Food Drying with an Attitude, and it's just very basic. Essentially all it is a teriyaki sauce, a little garlic, a little salt, a little pepper, and that's about it. The only difference is there's a lot less that you use with the ground meat because it all will stay in the meat, and a lot of it will be draining away after it's done marinating with the strip meat. So the first thing I'm going to do is prepare the solid meat by cutting it into narrow strips about a 1/4 inch or a little bit less thick, and to get that in the marinade, and then I'll move on to the ground beef. Now with the solid meat cut in strips, I'm also going to try another experiment, and I'm going to cut some of it with the grain and some of it against the grain. And most places say cut it with the grain for strips, but I've also read that by cutting it across the grain you get a little easier to chew piece of jerky. So I'm going to take this little end piece that's already kind of fallen off, and I'm going to cut that off, and that's the part I'll cut across the grain, and the rest I will slice with the grain into about 1/4 inch or a little bit less strips. Now, some people freeze the meat slightly first to make it easier to cut, but I found if you use a good sharp knife, which I have here and I just sharpened it, and it slices just fine. And there's a little bit of fat on the bottom. I'm going to trim that off. You want it as lean as you possibly can get it. Okay, this is the piece I'm going to cut across the grain. And the grain is running kind of an angle like this, so I'm going to have to cut this like that and into very thin slices. Now this end piece is going to end up being too small to use, but the rest will be fine. Okay, it's all sliced, nice thin strips, about a 1/4 inch or even a little less thick, and some are with the grain and some are against the grain. So that should be a good trial. Now the whole lot is going to go into a 1-gallon plastic zip top bag. And then into that I will pour the large bowl of marinade, teriyaki marinade. Okay, and I'm going to use that bowl for the ground beef when I get to that point. So now we'll seal that up and mix this around real good. So everything is covered, and then I'm going to crack the bag in the corner here and let some of that air out. Seal it up again. And massage that in real good. Get everything covered. And that's going to go in the refrigerator. I'm going to get the ground beef and start on that. Okay, I got the ground beef in the bowl. I broke it up into smaller pieces. It's amazing, this real lean ground beef, you work with it and your hands don't feel greasy or anything. Now I'm going to put the smaller amount of marinade, teriyaki marinade, into the ground beef. Get all that goodness out of there. And then, using my implement of destruction, hands, I'm going to mix it all together. Now this also will marinate, both of these are going to be marinating overnight, the same amount of time, so that we have a good equal amount of time in the marinade, the same marinade and everything, so hopefully the results will tell me which is better, ground beef or strip meat, and which way is it better when the strip meat is cut, across the grain or with the grain. And what I will do periodically, not going to get up out of bed, but I'll flip that bag of strip meat around a few times, and the same thing with this ground meat. I will knead it a few more times during the evening, and tomorrow morning we'll get it all made into strips and into the dehydrator, and that should tell the tale. Okay, it's the next day. I flipped it over 3-4 times during the evening as I did the ground meat, and I'm going to start with the strip meat in the bag and get that onto the trays. So I have a colander in the sink here that I will dump it into to drain off some of the excess marinade. And then what I generally do is just lay them out on paper towel here, just to get some of the excess marinade off them. I was worried I wouldn't be able to tell which ones were cut with the grain, which ones are cut against the grain, but it's quite obvious. This one is across the grain, and you can just see the gaps in between there. And this one is with the grain, and it's nice and straight. Okay, so I'm going to get these laid out. Okay, I've got them all kind of patted off and got most of the excess marinade off. Now it's just a matter of laying them on the dehydrator tray. And that's enough for that tray. We'll take another tray and put the rest on this tray. Okay, so those are ready to go on, and I will get the ground beef out of the fridge and get that ready to go. That's a little different, and we need to use a tool for that, so let me get that going.